Well, good afternoon, everyone. Sounds good to me. I don't know. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So I'm Christy Sprague. I'm a weed scientist here at Michigan State University. It was great to see some of you at our weed tour this morning. Really appreciated the attendance. Hopefully you enjoyed it and learned a lot of information. We've each year we put out a lot of trials, and it's kind of nice to be able to showcase those. So one of the things I wanted to do today is just kind of talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've been looking at. And one of the things that we get a lot of questions about is, okay, fall herbicide applications. How many of you are actually making applications in the fall? We've been seeing a few more people doing that, right? So there's obviously some benefits to that. And one of the things we really wanted to do is kind of see what those benefits are. The other thing we wanted to really look at is what is the influence of planting date on whether we should do a fall herbicide application, and just kind of looking at some different timings and so forth. So one of the things we wanted to do is kind of put a component of application timing, planting date, and different herbicides to see what our weed control looked like. And then also, are we going to see some wheat injury? And then does that injury actually translate to yield reductions? So one of the things I was going to do is let Kaddi, this is Kaddi Gewirtz. Kaddi is a master's student with me. She's in her second year. And she's going to talk a little bit about this trial that we have behind us and kind of some of the things that she's found over the last year or so, looking at kind of this problem. And then we'll open it up to some questions. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up on what we've been looking at here from a weed control standpoint, and really trying to figure out how fall herbicide applications fit, and then comparing it also to some spring stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kaddi, and she's going to explain what she's been doing over the last couple of years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kaddi Gewirtz, as Dr. Sprague said. I'm a second-year master's student with her, and I get the privilege of studying wheat. So behind me is the early planting, and to the west is the later planting. As we all know, the planting date window in Michigan can range anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. It starts the beginning or the middle of September, and it can go until the end of November. So this raises a question on how will fall applications really fit into this program, and if they'll be beneficial. This is the third year that we are looking at this experiment. In 2023, we had a location here at the MSU Agronomy Farm. In 2024, we had 2 locations at the MSU Agronomy Farm and at the Saginaw Valley Research and Extension Center in Frankenmuth. This year, we have 3 locations, one here at the Michigan State Plant Path, at the Michigan State Agronomy Farm, and then again at Severick. The first planting date are established the 3rd or 4th week of September. This was established September 21st. And then the second planting date is established roughly 4 weeks later. This was established October 24th. So in total, we have 5 different herbicide applications for this experiment. The early planting date has 2 different fall applications. The first fall application is around the 2 to 3 leaf stage for wheat, and the second fall application is roughly 2 to 3 weeks later. For the later planting date, there's only 1 fall application, again around that 2 to 3 leaf stage. We have 8 herbicide treatments there that we are looking at different timings. Those are Husky, Telenor, Affinity Broadspec, Culex, Osprey, and Powerflex. We are also looking at combinations in the fall of Husky and Osprey, and then Husky and Powerflex. Additionally, we are comparing Husky and the combination of Husky and Osprey in the spring. The fall applications occurred on November 12th, November 27th, and then the spring applications occurred on April 23rd. Leading on to those treatments, the fall applications caused some injury to the wheat, ranging anywhere from 5 to 15%. The injury consisted of yellowing and stunting of the wheat. However, this injury did follow through until the spring, but by the end of April, the injury was not apparent and ultimately did not affect yield. Last year, we did see the same results where the injury carried through the spring and did not ultimately affect yield. As far as weed control, the fall applications had good control of the winter annual broadleaf weeds. However, Osprey or Powerflex, the grass control herbicides, were needed to control the winter annual grasses. Overall, there was a benefit in the fall applications for the early planting as long as you were doing the timely planting. We did not see benefit in the later fall application for the early planting. I have taken weed biomass in the middle of the season, roughly 50 to 60 days before harvest. This consisted of annual bluegrass and common chickweed for the most part for my locations. There was no weeds at Saginaw for the past 2 years. It's a great location, but not necessarily for weed control. Additionally, I looked at canopy closure. I think it's very interesting that the early planting date closes canopy closure roughly 80 to 85%, 10 days before the later planting, so that impacts the weed control also. We are also taking these locations to yield. So far, none of the herbicide treatments have had any impact on yield. However, we have seen that the early planting date is anywhere from 10 to 15% higher in yielding than the later planting date. So that's pretty much all of the information. We'll now take questions that you guys have.
At fall application impact the crop response?
Sure, you can take it and I'll add on.
So the question was, how did the cold temperatures in the fall affect crop response, right? So as Katie said, some of our applications, particularly for the later planting, occurred at the end of November. In fact, last year, I think we were the first week of December. So you can ask our technicians how much they like being, Brian, you out there. You have gloves on and hat and everything, right? And what do? Put antifreeze in the water to make sure it doesn't freeze? No, just kidding. No, actually, normally we haven't seen a lot of injury, but in some cases we might see some at the beginning of April, right? But usually within a couple of weeks, once the wheat starts to grow and take off, it recovers. So one of the challenges that we have seen over the years is particularly getting those spring applications on in a timely manner, because we've been cold in the spring. And especially this year, when you think of how cool we were and how much wind, it is really difficult to find that particular application timing, especially when you got some cutoffs that are at feed stage 6, right? Particularly with things like Osprey, Powerflex, some of those ones. So we have seen some huge benefits for those that are struggling with annual bluegrass to those fall applications. So, you know, in general, we've been pretty happy with that Husky Osprey mix for a lot of our winter annual weeds, particularly with wheat that's planted early. With the later planted wheat, you know, we don't have a lot of weed growth, so we're probably not seeing that benefit. One of the challenges, though, is common ragweed, right? So if you've got ragweed, your fall applications probably are not going to hold through. But a lot of times we've got a lot of wheat growth, and you know that ragweed comes up, it's spindly, it's really not doing anything. It's just one of those things you might want to have to manage after you harvest your wheat. And in talking about that, not this year, but the previous 3 or 4 years, we're doing a lot of stuff where we're looking at planting cover crops after wheat. And we do have a good fact sheet in the back of the weed guide that talks about what cover crops are safe after what herbicides. And in general, most of them are pretty safe for most of the cover crops that we want to plant. One thing we also have done is, like, if you're trying to kill things like common ragweed or horseweed or mare's tail before you plant those cover crops, we also have some recommendations in there. And there are some herbicides that will do good at controlling those particular weed species that you're not going to want to plant certain covers, like maybe clover or some of the other ones. So we do have a nice guide in there to help you make those decisions. Any other questions that anybody might have? Yeah, we've had a lot of good luck with especially the grasses, right? So, and really our options are Osprey, Powerflex, and then Axial Bold. And it just depends on what species you have. So certain ones are better for others. So we try to have those kind of outlined in the weed guide. So, if you are from an area with windgrass, your Osprey Powerflex work the best. If you have rough stalk bluegrass, Axial Bold and Osprey work the best. So annual bluegrass, where you really benefit from that is if you do it in the fall, you're making sure you're making those applications before it starts to put that seed head out. Once that starts to put that seed head out, it's very difficult to control in the spring. So with prowl, a lot of times that's kind of like that post plant. So after you got the wheat planted and it starts to germinate and stuff, it works okay. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff that's been done to, especially like for windgrass control. Personally, I'd rather probably use the Osprey or Powerflex while it's still working. Any other questions? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody that came out to the weed day. It was great seeing everybody here. I'm glad hopefully this worked, and want to make sure we get this done before it kind of looks like it's clearing up, Dennis. I don't know. Maybe I'm bringing good luck. So anyway, thanks.